Hello! Hola! Willkommen! Bienvenue! Konnichiwa!
Aloha! How you doing? Yo! And in any language, welcome to Lego Island! We did it!
Yes!
Yeah, come on.
What was that? Take
No,
5, 6?
No, it was like 2 or 3 tries, and then we just planned it better, and it worked out. Okay.
It's fine.
Well, welcome to another episode of Between the Studs. This week we have a really fun discussion to both of us personally, I think.
Yes, absolutely.
This is going to be a little more niche than some of our other discussions. This is all about Lego Island, and more specifically the first one, but we'll talk about the sequels a little bit towards the end.
Yeah.
But yeah, so...
If you remember this from your childhood, you're going to love it. If you don't, maybe you'll go check it out after this.
If you haven't seen Lego Island, we definitely would encourage you to check it out.
Oh, absolutely.
But if you haven't, we will also explain what it is for you. So,
Yeah.
Daniel, to someone who doesn't know what it is, what is Lego Island?
Well, this year is actually the 25th anniversary of Lego Island, so it is as old as I am. It came out in 1997. It's actually, I was born 1 month before it came out.
Okay, there you go.
So I was playing it as a 1-month-old, naturally, on the PC.
Exactly. Mashing those buttons,
Yep. So it was one of the first ever real video games that the Lego Group made back then, and it was developed in partnership with a company called Mindscape, and we'll talk more about why I hate them later.
The controversy will come up later. Yes.
So it was an interesting time for video games. This was after the big 1993 video game crash market. It was way oversaturated. A lot of people were not making video games anymore, but Nintendo was kind of jacking it up. And what Lego did was they had this guy, Tormod Askildsen, I'm sure I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, kind of come up with a market report on whether or not Lego needed to get into video games. And the summation of his findings were getting into video games for the Lego Group is not an option, it is a necessity.
Yeah.
In terms of keeping kids' attention there in the mid to late 90s.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that during that time, the 80s, 90s were a great time for Lego as far as sets.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's a little bit of a gray area between that and the early 2000s where things are like they're trying to figure out what's next.
Exactly.
And so I think this is part of
that. In terms of keeping kids' attention, keeping them engaged. Yeah. And, that kind of led later on to them straying maybe away from the brick and things.
Galador.
Yeah, exactly. But for what we got, it was fantastic.
This was a home run for me. But yeah, anyway, sorry, gotta interject.
No, of course. Yeah. So basically what happened was he did that report, and then at the February 1995 New York Toy Fair, Wes Jenkins, the creative director of the game, and Paul Melmid, the educational research director, kind of pitched it to the Lego Group doing this video game. And so, the timeline's a little fuzzy, but eventually these guys got together and they partnered with Mindscape and started making this fantastic video game. And these guys were the exact right guys for the job for that time period. They were so unbelievably creative, and the way that they tackled these problems, they made a full-scale model of the island, like on the size of a table.
Wow.
With all the buildings really built out of Lego in full size. And they had kids come in and play with the model to see what they were interested in and what they wanted, and what they wanted things to do, and then they incorporated that into the video game after watching them play with the physical model. So
that's cool.
Just the way that they were kind of doing their market research was really unique for the time, I think.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. There's some people saying, there's not a lot of pictures out there that have kind of been lost to time of that physical model, but there is one video that's on YouTube. I think it's called The Making of Lego Island, and you can see the physical model there, which is pretty interesting. It's enormous.
I have not seen that. I will have to check it out.
Yeah,
so obviously I played the game, but that's pretty neat that there was a physical model that was made to describe it. So
yeah, it was very cool. The original title of the game was Adventures on Lego Island, and I guess they shortened it to make it more
condense that a little bit.
Yeah. They also typically, use the Lego logo and then just the word island. So another way to kind of condense it. I'm just going to keep throwing factoids.
Yeah, no, I love
here.
This is
just
great.
Sort of a list of bullet points.
Some of these I don't know, so this is great.
Most of this came from that making of video, which only came out recently. They're sort of doing a tour through like the development offices at Mindscape, and they've got full-size Lego palm trees, and
Wow.
everybody's got Lego bricks on their desk, mixed in with empty Mountain Dew cans piled all over their Windows 95 gateway computers or whatever. It's a hilarious video, but there's some real gems in it. You can see how things were different in the development process. The original racetrack loop had a loop-de-loop in it. You actually went upside down in the racetrack. That was removed from the game for one reason or another.
Probably too difficult to program, just physically.
Maybe.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. There's the infamous bad ending where the booster takes over the island and there's lightning and homeless people and graffiti everywhere, and it was
piles of bricks.
Too scary for the kids, so they had to dial it back a little bit. And then another great source of information about the development of the game was there was an interview with Wes Jenkins, the creative director, and he talked a lot about other scrapped content from the game, which I think a lot of us as kids who played it could identify with. The the post office and the superstore on Lego Island were buildings that you couldn't really interact with.
Yeah,
they had wanted to add different games or interactive features with that for sure.
Yeah, whenever you clicked on them, someone would run up and say, "Oh, it's closed for remodeling," and I was like, "Stop it! I just want to look inside."
Which was a great pun for what it was. But it was I want to see the inside of the superstore.
Tiny bit frustrating, but actually, it did a good job of deterring us from trying to focus on it too much. So.
Yeah, it did. It did. And I think for the post office, there was a planned, a lot of the missions in the game were about running errands, basically.
Mm-hmm.
You would deliver a pizza or drive the ambulance at the hospital.
Yep.
So the planned one for the post office was probably to deliver mail to somebody.
Oh, yeah.
Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But, Wes Jenkins talked a lot about that in the interview. There was supposed to be some sort of special end game sequence if you got first place in every mission as every character.
Wow.
The score cube in the information center.
Mm-hmm.
So just a lot of interesting stuff that ended up getting cut from the game. But as far as what was in the game, I don't know if you want to talk more about that.
We got to briefly describe, just kind of, you already mentioned that it was mostly just running errands, but what are some of the highlights for you as far as the gameplay? So.
The race. It's got to be the race. It was one of the
daunting
best
challenge.
parts of the game. It was very hard for a kid. I mean, it's still hard now, kind of.
Yeah.
Not as bad as Lego Racers with Rocket Racer, but it was a very difficult part of the game. Most of the rest of them were, pick this thing up here and take it somewhere else, and there's going to be obstacles in your way.
Yeah. Compared to a lot of the other challenges, I think the race was a hugely ambitious thing to not only create in the video game, but also to complete. Because everything else is as long as you just go the right direction, you're going to make the errand in time. Yeah. But this is you could just get absolutely smacked across the track and lose all your progress. And so that was a much more difficult challenge compared to the rest of them. I liked them all, but that one was pretty terrifying. So
The jet ski race was also difficult, but for whatever reason, the main race really just sticks in my mind as being the hardest. And then, of course, the end game sequence with the chasing the Brickster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the jet ski was probably my favorite just because it was pretty simple. You go over the ramps, you go the right directions. You could even try alternate routes because there was a couple options of obstacles to avoid. But yeah, fun challenges overall. And it was also interesting to do it as different characters too, because you could play as several different of the Lego Island's inhabitants.
Yep, there were 5 main playable characters. And there's an interesting... it's actually more than a theory because they reference it in this book here, but each character's personality was based on the multiple intelligences theory by Howard Gardner. And so Pepper was mathematical. He's always talking about the degrees of stuff as he's skateboarding. So Mama was musical, of course. She always had her piano. Mama Briccolini, who worked at the pizzeria.
Yep.
Papa Briccolini was kinesthetic or coordination.
Because he's drawing the pizzas.
He was usually juggling pizzas and things like that. Yep. Nick Brick, the police officer, was spatial or directions. I think he was always
talking about doing this, and he was doing these hand motions.
Laura Brick, the other police officer, was interpersonal or friendly. Yep. She was just kind of your friendly neighborhood police officer. She had sort of a North Midwestern, almost Wisconsin accent.
Yeah, kind of a the pronunciation of her R's was very specific.
Oh, don't you know?
Yeah, exactly.
That kind of accent. So she was just the friendly police officer. So those were the 5 playable characters, and then there was also the Brickster, who was the villain. He was intrapersonal, which is very like thoughtful and ponderous.
Yeah, and maybe didn't like people. So.
Yeah, not as interpersonal like Laura.
Exactly.
And then the last one was the Infomaniac, which we'll, I'm sure, have to talk more about.
He was very, I would say spastic is probably the best way to describe it.
Yeah, chaotic. Yeah. And
friendly, but a bit much. So.
His type of intelligence was linguistic.
Yes.
So they were playing off of, there's no one way to measure intelligence. Each person has these different types of strong suits, and then each character, sort of had maybe like a weakness as well. For Pepper, it was his dyslexia.
Yeah, he couldn't read very well. So.
I think for Nick, maybe he had like a memory thing or something. Those are not as clear cut.
Yeah, there's they would kind of jab at each other or say something in conversation about somebody like this always happens to you. It's like it was some fun little character design. They were all very well fleshed out. If you played the entire game, you got to know these different characters quite well. It was great. So.
I think a lot of that probably came from the influence of Paul Melmid. He was the educational research director I mentioned earlier. And I want to say, I didn't write this down, but I want to say he was from like Harvard or MIT or something. So he was very well educated and probably brought a lot of these things to the table.
Making it smarter than it probably had to be, but by extension making it more interesting for us down the road. So
it's very similar to, I don't know if you've ever heard the working theory that all of the characters in SpongeBob SquarePants are based off of the 7 Deadly Sins.
Yes,
so another very kind of interesting thing where somebody just takes a concept and uses it to build these very diverse, well-rounded characters.
Yeah, a little bit of philosophy in a kid's video game actually adds a bit of depth to it and maybe a little bit more realism. So it's great.
Yeah, which probably gets lost on a lot of people, but when they reference it in something like that, it's interesting to see.
And now that when you mentioned about especially Nick Brick, I remember he was always talking about going this direction, that direction, and up and down, and I was like, why is Nick talking about this? Like stopping me in the middle of my driving around to talk about this, and it's hilarious.
For sure. A little bit more background on the game. It was enormously popular for that time period.
It's good to hear. We didn't really know back then because there wasn't just social media, but
exactly. So between 1997 and 1999, it sold over 909,000 copies.
Nice.
So almost 100,000 copies, or sorry, almost 1 million copies. It was the 7th best-selling video game of 1998 when it grossed over $10.2 million.
That's great.
It also won the Academy of Arts and Sciences Family/Kids Entertainment Title of the Year Award. A very unwieldy title, but some other.
It was winning notoriety at its time. So
awesome. a very well received game. Now it's looked back on very fondly by kids,
nostalgic,
and adults alike.
Yeah,
for sure. Also talking about the characters, there were some very high-profile voice actors that were brought in for this game.
See, I didn't realize that at all.
Mama Briccolini was voiced by June Foray, which a lot of people might know from the Rocky and Bullwinkle cartoon.
Right.
She was Natasha, sort of the evil, Russian lady, and I think maybe some other characters. She was also Cindy Lou Who, I guess in some version of The Grinch, I'm not sure.
Right, gotcha, okay.
Pepperoni was voiced by John Morris, who was Andy from Toy Story.
Wow.
A lot of people recognize that one, but don't really, put it together.
I never would have made that connection. That's amazing.
Yep. The Infomaniac character was visually based on Wes Jenkins, the creative director, but he didn't end up actually voicing him. Wes Jenkins instead voiced, it's either Enter or Return.
Well, I think they're both
characters.
The same voice, but they just talk a little deeper. That's my prediction. But
it could be.
Keep going, outgoing. And it's just,
What happened to the other guy? We dropped him. Well, don't drop him.
Well, don't drop him. They were my favorite. I think it's probably because I had a younger brother. We were very close, and so we were always bumping into.
Yeah, same kind of thing.
I'm getting that vibe.
The clumsy doctors at the hospital, the clumsy ambulance.
They were delightful.
Sure.
Yeah.
That brings me to pretty much the end of the development of the game, which unfortunately takes us to what is known as the Great Mindscape Controversy.
Yes.
So basically, what happened was all of the developers of this game were, promised performance bonuses based on the success of the game, which was common practice for the time. And what Mindscape did was they fired the entire production team the day before the game came out so that they did not have to pay them these performance bonuses. They then folded the company Mindscape to justify that, but I guess they still got all of their money for the selling of the game.
Wow.
And the quote that really sums it up from Mindscape was they are quoted as saying, "It wasn't personal, it was just business," which is pretty cold to me.
And I think that very line is something that like Lord Business would say.
Yeah,
I think
totally.
I think he actually said it in the movie. I could be
That
wrong.
would
So
be interesting.
Morgan, correct us if we're wrong.
It's not personal, it's just business.
But yeah, it's like almost baffling. It's like if the game went well and it sold enough copies, why not just pay the employees a little bonus? It's like it's just like why not? If everything worked out, they just had to get that little extra cut. It's horrible to think about.
It is. It's terrible. But the real tragedy was we didn't get to see. There was a planned sequel that they had, Wes Jenkins and the guys had plans to make called Beneath the Fantasy, spelled like phantom and sea, but like the word fantasy.
Yeah.
And there are bits of that and nods to that you see in the game. In the information center, if you take the elevator to the second floor, there was like this ocean scene, and then there's of course the secret pirate cave. Those were all kind of going to be nods to the sequel, but unfortunately never happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. And because they did a lot of Diver and Aquazone stuff at that time.
Yeah.
And so it would have been a logical next step if they had continued successfully making video games from that company, that group. So
for sure. And I guess that would have taken place in the ocean around the island. Maybe there would have been callbacks to the original game.
Separate game. I don't know. So
Yep.
Interesting. Yeah, so the next question, Daniel, now that we've really given a pretty thorough description of the game itself, well, we've both played it as kids. What are some of your takeaways and some of your favorite nostalgic moments, observations? What did it mean to you? And we'll talk about the builds in a second, but what did Lego Island mean to you as a kid? So.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing about this game was even though it was, made by Lego, which is a company for kids, this was one of the first open world video games.
It really was.
This was, a lot of people call it, Grand Theft Auto for kids, because you're just, you're free to roam about wherever.
You're driving around.
Anything. Yep. Obviously there's not a lot of the unsavory things that go on in that video game.
But you can grab a vehicle and start going. That's the one thing.
Exactly. And so it was kind of predecessors to a lot of open world concept games like that. But it was, it was just for kids, and you could go around and do whatever you want. And I think that's really what Lego was all about. You could click on anything and it would at least make a funny noise or change colors or do a flip.
The trees would spin around.
Exactly.
There's always something. Yeah.
Yep. So, everywhere you went, there was something to interact with that would have a little joke or a reference or at least a funny sound effect or something. So the world was yours to do with it what you please. And I think that was one of the biggest things for me. And then I would also be remiss if I didn't mention the soundtrack for this game.
Yes.
Was just unlike anything else.
Yeah, the game was well designed on its own, but then you have these really, really fun, creative, and different musical tracks for almost different areas of the map, different activities.
Absolutely.
So it was just like everything was really enhanced by a good soundtrack, and it was just awesome. So
every mission had a different song. Every just free roam area had a different song, and then the ones that were left over you could play on the jukebox at the pizzeria.
Or there was a radio in the top of the Infomaniacs tower you could turn on and listen to different tunes.
You could have it just going on in the background the whole time while you're driving around in a car or anywhere. LEGO radio, ding ding.
We're actually planning on putting a LEGO radio in our city display just as a nod to that. At some point,
I can't wait to see that.
We've been a little bit lax on finishing the city, but it'll get done at some point. That's one of the plans.
Yeah, that'll be fantastic.
Yeah.
But the soundtrack was done by Lauren Nelson. There's some great interviews out there with him. He's a really interesting guy. He's a very talented musician and kind of composer for things like this.
Yeah.
One of the songs on the jukebox, Baroque in Brick, was credited to the Lauren Swelk Orchestra, which is like his group, which I think is a reference to Lawrence Welk, which I think some older people watching might get that joke better than I. But one of the most interesting, like, crazy happenstances surrounding this video game was there's a lot of demand now for remastered editions of the original soundtrack. And the reason that that's so difficult to do is because Lauren Nelson, the guy who originally did it, and this was back in the 90s, so a lot of things were done on reel-to-reel and with synthesizers and things. He lived on a houseboat in the Bay of San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
And so he had all of these reel-to-reel tapes and all of his stuff on his houseboat in the San Francisco Bay. And he went on vacation one time, and he came back, and his houseboat had sunk into the harbor of San Francisco. And so all of the original tapes are lost to time. And
they're gone.
It's just such like a wild occurrence. It just, I don't know. It blows my mind.
It's a great story. It's baffling and amazing and hilarious, and it's also sad because we'll never get to necessarily hear them in high def. But
so there are some that people are slowly working on remastering and things for remakes of the game or just to enjoy or whatever. But the soundtrack is still immensely popular. It's just such a great retro sound. It's been sampled tons of times in like a lot of modern vaporwave synthesized kind of music that's going for that retro feel. So go give it a listen if you've never heard it. Maybe it'll string up some nostalgic chords.
It's all on YouTube, So and we actually play it in the store when we do our live streams because it's not really copyrighted. Yeah. It's not going to get caught by any of the filters. So we'll actually play that sometimes in the store. It's great.
Yeah. So thanks Lauren for that one.
Well, I mean, thank you for making it, and tragic that it sunk to the bottom of the ocean, which is hilarious and iconic.
Yep.
But I got to share a little bit about when I played this game. Me and my siblings. I don't know if you played it with your brothers or anything. Was it mostly just yourself?
Not so much. They were a fair bit older than me. I'm sure they were the reason we owned the game at all.
Yeah.
But by the time I came around, I was still interested in playing with those things because I was still playing with Legos. So it was still a pretty timeless thing in that sense.
That's good, yeah. But me and my older sister and then my younger brother, we all played this extensively, and really so much to enjoy about it. First of all, it's an open world game. We had our family was actually pretty early to get a Windows. I think we had a 95 and then a 98. And so we got to just play on those, and that was like one of our first games was a Lego game because we also had Lego sets as one of our favorite early toys. And so Lego Island was a natural thing to get and play. And so one of my favorite things is you could ride around the vehicles, but there was this little trick you could get off mid-ride and it would keep going.
Yes.
And it would just go on a track around a certain part of the island. So we would eventually get all the vehicles going all over the island. And all the inhabitants would be trying to walk along their daily routes. And they would just go flying in the air or run over. And so we would just have chaos island. Oh, we were terrible, but no, we had a great time, and
I always try and do that on the long straightaway back here because that was where you could get it almost all the way up to the max speed of the vehicle.
Oh yeah, the skateboard and the bike were particularly fast.
Yeah,
but it was very fun to do that.
You would hop off and it would just go.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if it's an unintentional bug or like an actually fun feature, but it was just hilarious.
I'm sure it had to have been a bug.
Yeah, but either way, we enjoyed that immensely. And then the memorable thing is, I am almost 30 years old now, and I still remember some of the dialogue like it's yesterday. It's very iconic, very memorable, and just I remember walking through, just going around the island, and then you'd be accosted by a bunch of these guys on their the pyramid. They're all doing their little scene. It was great. What is the name of them?
The Flying Legondos.
Yeah, that's
their name, and it was the band of they all had mustaches
and they all had numbers or letters or something on their shirts. I forget, but anyway, it was
probably LEGO.
Yeah, and they would just all show up out of nowhere and do a little pyramid for you, and you're just like, okay.
Yeah. Or the infomaniac would show up and all of his limbs would explode.
Exactly. He'd fly around.
Just bizarre stuff.
But it was delightful. It was great. And so Lego Island, top tier nostalgia content. And what's funny is, given its old technology, it's not easy to necessarily just pop in and play today.
Yeah.
But there are ways you can get it to work. I know that you figured out a way on your computer at home, and we also briefly figured it out on my laptop here at work. But for scientific purposes.
Yeah, of course.
So you can still access a lot of the content that was available on Lego Island, if not actually play the full game and enjoy the greatest video game to release in 1997, 1998.
Yep.
And be able to enjoy it. But yeah, so let's talk a little bit about. I've been looking at your build the entire time, getting reference
I have been
points.
too. Yeah.
So let's talk about first of all some of the sets that we've brought and some of the little builds that you have mocks. I have a set or two that are kind of referencing the Lego Island. But let's talk about your build here. I mean, we may as well start with the big one, right?
Yeah, of course. So this is the original map of Lego Island, which there's a interesting theory that I have. I don't know if it's widespread or not, but the shape of the island is kind of shaped like the United States. there's like a little offhang for Florida, and then like the Baja Peninsula or something over here, and it's sort of rectangular in nature. But
if you really low polyed the United States, that actually is not far off, right?
Not too far off. But anyway, this was a mock that I made. This was really a byproduct of COVID, I suppose, while I was at home with a lot of free time. And this was one of the first mocks that I ever made where I actually mostly designed it in studio before doing it, because I really wanted to get a lot of very clean lines and accurate proportions and things before I physically built it.
It's a precise, deliberate shape. It's not like a organic free-form mock. It has to be a certain look. So,
exactly. And so I kind of chose the scale just based on how small I could make all of the buildings and have them still be recognizable. But I'm so thrilled with how this turned out. I posted this several places, including my Instagram as well as Reddit, and I got a lot of hits for people. I mean, I'm sure you know very well that people always ask for instructions for things.
Oh, yeah.
Whenever you post it anywhere. And I was able to send a lot of people the studio file for this. And there's at least one person who totally recreated this exact mock from the studio file that I sent them. So props to them for being able to figure out, because I sure wasn't going to make step-by-step instructions.
It's not easy, but it's not. Once you have the studio file, it's possible. Right?
Yeah, it is. But I wanted to get all of the iconic elements, of course, including the information center, the helicopter there.
Working propeller blades, I love it.
I built the flattest part of the island. I built all using snot construction purely because I wanted the palm trees to be able to spin. So they're all in sideways Technic bricks.
See, I would have thought that would be tiles. That's great.
Nope. Yeah, I could have done it with tiles if I wanted it to be easy, but I wanted it to be difficult.
You wanted it to be game accurate.
I wanted the palm trees to spin.
That's fun.
That was an important part of the game.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Yep. So we've got that. We got the police station over here. The I guess it's like the
Coast Guard outpost.
Coast Guard thing. Yep. The pizzeria, the post office, the superstore. These were all just people's houses, which don't ask why there's only 3 houses for all the people that live on this island.
For 40 people. That
or why a pizzeria is the only place to eat.
Where else are you going to eat? Yeah.
Exactly. The racetrack, the bank, the gas station, and the hospital.
Yep.
And those are all kind of represented by the different icons along the front there. And the best feature of this, which I wasn't even sure I was going to do when I first started making this. I made the island first just in case. But the race, which is this logo here, if you press it,
it unlocks.
And you lift up the lid, there's the entire underground racetrack. And of course, we can't forget the skeleton guy there.
Giant skeleton kicking everybody off.
I'm sure we'll have some close-up pictures here on B-roll.
We'll film some B-roll of this because it's not only the island, but the underneath is very, very detailed. It seems pretty close to the scale, where you kind of like...
It's about right. I was able to find like one photo of somebody who had somehow gone into the game files and gotten like an aerial view of the racetrack map.
Very cool.
So I was able to get it pretty proportional in terms of what the layout of all these different rooms are. Because when you're driving through it, it's utter chaos.
It's a nightmare fuel, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people say they were scared by it when they were a kid because it's all dark and
giant octopus swinging around.
And it's very spooky, this underground kind of racetrack. There were ghosts and skeletons. I don't know. So yeah, you got the rolling pizzas, you got flying sharks. There was a space shuttle for some reason.
Yep.
And a fire truck, and then the spinning octopus there. So lots of fun little features for sure.
That is awesome.
Yeah, I took this to Brick Fair, Virginia last year, and it was so fun just watching people's eyes light up as soon as they recognized what it was. And a lot of them were guys about your and my age.
Yep.
Who fondly remembered playing it as a kid, and they were like, no way, dude, that's awesome. I had the music going and some of this other stuff set up to catch people's eyes.
Well, a few information
That's
cards.
exactly.
Great. Exactly. And you also have the original CD here, too. It looks like it's in pretty good shape. And the jeweled case,
As far as I know, I haven't plugged it into a computer because I have it downloaded just as the fun. It's got a few scratches on it.
That's very clean compared to the one I remember having.
There's the original game case, and then this thing here was something that came with the game. It says it's the instruction manual, but it's really a lot more. There's little comics and things inside.
It's like a hand-drawn comic illustration.
It talks all about the origins of the Infomaniac and the Brickster and how he's like he always says he's like a billion zillion years old or something.
Oh yeah,
when he
wow.
first came to Lego Island, and you find out that he actually created the Brickster, and
oh
so
my goodness,
it's kind of like Tron.
Yeah, wow.
Flynn created Clue, who ended up becoming the villain. So
it could be some references to that. Then.
Interesting kind of creationist take on this universe here.
Amazing.
There's little like ads in it, as though it was a newspaper. There's an ad for the pizzeria and the gas station with all sorts of funny little jokes.
Gases for the masses. That's funny.
Yeah. Has this ever happened to you? Your head falls off. Solution: go to the Lego Island Medical Center, located on the northeast side of the island.
Oh my god.
Gases for the masses. Yeah. So all sorts of fun stuff. There's like a crossword puzzle in there.
Wow.
And just crazy stuff. And then there's little like interesting tidbits about the game. Like this is where the multiple intelligences thing is referenced. So a lot of good content in there.
That's awesome. That's how many pages are there?
Oh, wow.
It's like looks like 30 pages or so.
At least 25.
Yeah, wow.
24, 25. Yeah.
That's awesome.
You got the map. So that's a lot of fun little stuff in there.
I would hope that that's somewhere online accessible. Maybe Brickset
so.
or a PDF somewhere you can see it.
Try and dig around, see if you can find it. If not, leave a comment. Maybe we'll take some high quality scans of it or something.
Yeah. But and you also have the kind of the welcome area, main menu area of the game here too.
A little side build here for the main menu with the big blue brick book.
Sign
in, please.
Yep.
But then we've got the various minifigures here. So there's the Infomaniac. This one actually came out around the time of the game, just as a single poly bag. And then the rest of these figures were from the later Extreme Stunts sets, which I'm sure you're going to talk about here in a minute.
We've got those once we're kind of done with the first game, of course. But yeah, so and then that's about what you've got, except for the older computer desk.
Yeah, this last thing here, I just built this as like a Windows 95 standard kind of looking computer, and I actually did, before I posted pictures of this, I did a stop motion using the Infomaniac character, and I used the sound where if you tried to boot up the game but didn't have the CD in, he would go, "Whoops, you forgot to put the CD in your computer." And a lot of people remember that for whatever reason, so I did a little stop motion about that.
It's almost like a meme now.
Yeah,
it
totally,
could be, yeah.
Totally. There's all sorts of people who have twisted that and made it funny. So I did that and then kind of announced this mock before.
It's like a segue,
yeah.
That's awesome. But so I don't have any cool mocks from the game. Although one day I would love to take my hand to try a few of the buildings. Maybe I know the police station is actually a set, and some of the others are sets. And talking about sets, here's a couple that are either inspired by or are actually included in the game. This back one here, this is actually Steven's set, but I picked it up because the reason he got it from our friends Tim and Zach up in Michigan was you got the little Coast Guard check, and this is the Wave Jump Racer. So it's actually referring to the jet skis, but it's mostly the building and the buggy back there that the part count comes from. But so the jet skis were actually, these are designs you could use in the game. You could, when you were in every vehicle-based challenge, you could customize your vehicle.
Yes.
With the paints and the decals.
The helicopter, the jet skis.
The race cars. And the buggy.
And I think the tow truck.
Yep.
Yeah, at the gas station.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably all the vehicles.
All the different vehicles. And so, it includes two of the designs that you could use. And I think the other two were in different sets. Yeah. But, so that was...
had those same decals and numbers and things on them.
Exactly. These are 8 and 5, and you could use both of those in the game. So it's, when Steven saw this, he's like, it's from Lego Island, because it's just a generic town set from that time, but it's more special to us because of the fact that was the beach that we rode our skateboard on all the time. Exactly. It just didn't make any sense, but it's very fun. So but this one was really cool, and it's got all the alt builds in the back too. So if anyone's wondering, this is set number 6334, and I forget what Steven paid for it. I think it wasn't that bad because it's kind of
being generic town sets.
Underrated,
yeah.
Most of the city and town sets from this era are they're not too crazy. Some of them are pretty wild because they have rare pieces.
A sealed one for sure, but
yeah. But that one was cool. And then one that I got at the store not too long ago was this little pizzeria set. And this is actually not necessarily in the game because they made a custom building for the pizzeria for the game. They designed one.
It was sort of a wider, flatter.
This is very impractically small for a pizzeria. It's like he's standing about a foot away from the ovens, and there's a faucet but no sink.
It's more like a little food stand that you would see like on a boardwalk or something.
Exactly. In a Lego city, it actually makes enough sense. But basically, I'm pretty sure those umbrellas and that pizzeria sign was both used. Those art pieces were used in the game, though, because they seem pretty memorable to me.
Of course,
the pizzas are the same design, of course, and I don't. The outfit isn't quite the same, but you can imagine customizing it to be Papa Briccolini. They didn't have
all the characters had custom faces that never really appeared as minifigures.
No, they had kind of like different color eyes and stuff like that. So they got pretty creative.
Different art style.
But you have a little pizza delivery truck. This was not in the game.
That should have been in the game.
It would have been hilarious. Great. And you can have all the pizzas in the back as the little doors.
That's great.
And for being on the little go-kart chassis base, it all fits. And he has a radio in there. I mean, he's well equipped to deliver pizzas. It's great. Yeah. So, and I think that this piece right here may be printed instead of stickered, so that's fun.
It looks like it. That's sweet.
So yeah, fun little build, and I forget how much I paid for this for the built version, but I think it was not cheap. It was actually like $40 to $60. I remember.
That one is more iconic for sure than some of the more generic buildings that fit under some other themes.
But just like Steven, the reason I bought this one was because I looked at it and I remembered my childhood and Lego Island 1, and I was really excited about that.
Nostalgia is a powerful thing, for sure.
It is. I think that's one of the main motivators for the business model of Atlanta Brick Co. So if you want a nostalgia trip, go visit our website and check out all the old sites.
Absolutely. There you go. Good plug.
Anyway.
Some other sets that were a huge part of the game, the police station was a real set. It was, let me see, I think I wrote it down here. 6598 Metro PD station.
That, and it also included the helicopter in the prison island as well. They just kind of spread it a little bit, and it made perfect sense.
For sure, yeah. But that helicopter was a huge part of the game.
So
I still have to cover that here in a minute. We got wave jump racers, and then the racetrack, the sort of building that was at the start, was set 6337 fast track finish.
Yes, I've seen that one around. I don't know if it was in the store or if it was just I've seen it, and I was like very tempted to buy it because of Lego Island, but I don't think I pulled the trigger that time because I don't have that set.
And I think it had the big Octane banner for the starting line, and it had the grandstands for everyone to sit in.
Exactly.
That's another great one.
Excellent stuff. But
and that actually sort of reminds me. There's another guy, Brian's Bricks, who actually. He took those ones that were sets, and then he actually recreated every other building from the island out of bricks in, the real scale that
the right size,
in the video game. So that was another pretty cool, pretty neat thing to see for sure. Was the information center built in real scale. It's
really quite cool to see. I remember seeing. I'm not sure if it was that particular builder, but it must have been because there's not too many people who've made all those buildings to scale.
Yeah.
But I remember seeing those scale model builds at a convention and seeing the Lego. And I think he was kind of on the edge of the convention hall, so he wasn't getting as much attention. So I walked over and I'm like, dude, this is awesome. Yeah. And so he was like, oh yeah, man, this is the best game ever. And so we were in a great chat. But it's awesome. Really cool to see that built in the full scale and minifig scale. So it's exciting. But
I'm sure that was hard to do because the buildings were all very low poly. You couldn't see like where the seams were in the bricks to figure out how it's constructed.
You'd have to kind of guess work at some of that.
Yeah. For sure.
And a lot of those pieces are not necessarily common anymore. They're all older town pieces. And they might not have had, you had to buy probably several copies of sets at the time to build all these buildings.
Yeah, so, a lot of the windows and larger panels and things were very specific to the time.
Exactly. But so some people are able to do it, and I'm sure it's probably not the last time we'll see mocks from Lego Island or other Lego games made before. So
I certainly hope not,
Cool. But, so that's pretty much rounds off our discussion of Lego Island 1. Is that correct?
I think so, yeah.
So, but Lego Island 1 was, I think, probably the most meaningful to both of us, because I don't think Daniel has really had that much experience with the 2 sequel games.
Not quite as much. I know you have a very passionate history with that, though.
Absolutely. So, I think it was either at the same time or near the same time. Within a year or two, we acquired the Lego Island 2, The Brickster's Revenge, and Lego Island Extreme Stunts. And those are the 2 sequels. So it's basically Lego Island 2 and 3.
Yeah.
So Lego Island 2, The Brickster's Revenge, it was different company. I'm not even sure, what was the name of it?
Silicon Dreams, I think.
That
Silicon
was
something.
They put the logo before the game as usual.
After Mindscape did their big flub, Lego did the right thing and said, "Okay, well, we're not working with you ever again."
Yeah, they didn't hire the same company again that treated its employees pretty badly. So, but yeah, this game was pretty fun. It was a longer playthrough because the Lego Island was completely remade. They had a big train track going around the outside edge.
Yeah.
You had a couple carryover characters, such as there's one character in Lego Island that has green legs and red torso and arms and hat. And they called him Red Green Base in the sequel. I'm not sure if that was his name in the original game, but he carried over into the second and the third Lego Island games.
Oh, wow.
Enter and Return were also in both of those as well. I think that's just a handful of characters that actually made it besides the Infomaniac, of course.
Right. Were the main playable characters in that one as well?
Pepper, Nick and Laura, and Papa and Mama. They were all, but you could only play Pepper. There was no other characters you could play anymore, which is sad, but I think it made sense from a gameplay perspective. It made it less complicated if they're going to all these different locations, which is the big change from both the first and third game is that in Lego Island 2 you go to several different worlds because portals start opening up all over the island. It's almost like an end game or a different situation. It's crazy.
Well, to me it reminded me kind of like Time Cruisers or something.
It had that
different
vibe.
Themes that they were visiting.
For sure. But so Knight's Kingdom 1 was heavily featured. You could go visit King Leo's castle and you had Cedric the Bull was causing mayhem over in the castle world and you had to do several challenges there to help get the pages to the Brickopedia to rebuild the island because the Brickster obviously escapes and causes mayhem pretty early in the game, surprisingly.
I think I've seen that when we're shooting the cannons at his castle.
Oh, that is one of my favorite games.
Yeah.
Now, some of the challenges, there was a number of challenges in the first game, but there are probably 20 or so challenges throughout or more in Lego Island 2. I forget the exact number, but you could be in one world and play like 4 to 5 challenges in that world, and so it was pretty bonkers. And some of them were easy, like the cannonball one was pretty easy. Aim your cannon, you shoot at it. The jousting one took a touch, like you had to have just the right.
I watched somebody do a playthrough, and it looked near impossible.
If you didn't have the right timing or the speed, and even the instructions were not very clear, it's like you had to figure it out. And eventually, we did through years of playing. But it was Lego Island 2, very fun. It was not super buggy for us. It ran about as smoothly as the first one did on our. I think we had Windows XP at this time. But so it was a pretty straightforward game. You visited the Knight's Kingdom 2, Adventurers Island. Did a lot in Adventurers. You did Desert. You did the dinosaurs. So lots of different Adventurers themed challenges. And then there was also a 2001: A Space Odyssey vibe, like dystopian space place where Brickster sends a lot of people, and it was
like the Phantom Zone or something.
It really was. It reminds me of the race from Lego Island 1. It was just had a very weird vibe, and there's all these monkeys dancing around totems. It was very weird.
It's very bizarre.
And so that was a weird part of the game, but eventually you win and you restore the island, and the Brickster is captured again. So it's pretty similar in that regard. Island Extreme Stunts, once you move, I think it was actually only a year or two later they produced the third one. That one was very different because it actually had a few sets come along with it. And that's what I have over on my right, and I'll kind of talk about them. But this game, a lot of fun once you got it to work. So we've talked a little bit about the development of the other first game, especially.
Each game was actually getting more buggy than the last.
It really did. So the first one, I mean, when you play it on the 98, it's got to work or it's not going to work. It's like it's either yes or no. And I think that for most systems during that time, it worked pretty good.
I don't recall really ever having any issues with it. Playing it on the original machine it was intended to. You know, now trying to play it on modern ones, there can be some issues.
Like the frame rate issues can cause a little bit of movement difficulty.
Yeah.
But
there are tools. I'll do a quick pointer to a YouTube video by a YouTuber called Matt KC. If you look that up, he's got a really nice tool called Lego Island Rebuilder, I believe, that can help you get that running. So
kind of debug a few things for modern systems.
I would definitely give that a look if you want to try and get it running on a modern PC.
Yeah. But so both these, the first game and the second game was a much beefier game. But if you had a Windows 98 that was capable or Windows XP, it ran pretty good. When Island Extreme Stunts, it was designed to run on XP and older, but it really did not work. There was some major issues about, the game was designed to start on the first challenge. You don't get to look at the menu. You're immediately racing a car after the Brickster for a movie set.
My goodness.
And so you're chasing the Brickster. You're trying to run him off the road. It's pretty wild stuff. And when you finish the challenge, the game crashes every single time.
This is the very first challenge.
Very first challenge. You don't even get to look at a menu. You don't get to look at anything. It just it starts off with a great chase sequence.
What a warm welcome.
And no, it's a fun challenge. But then as soon as you end, you don't get to play anymore. That's the end of the game. And so,
okay, money well spent.
Absolutely frustrating to young teenager Mark, who doesn't really know that much about technology. There's no help forums anywhere.
Right. You were savvy. You were able to figure it out.
So eventually, after trial and error, I don't know how many times I tried to get it to work. We figured out that if you played the game, the first challenge, and then you hit escape, go through the menu, quit, you could get out of the challenge to the main menu and then resume, and you'd start out on the island prior to having started the challenge. Mm-hmm. So we could get onto the island, play around, and eventually we found out that if you played the first challenge, you could actually finish it and it would work if you had already gone back and then gone forward again to that point where you started off initially. So. Yeah. And then the rest of the game worked fine.
Online that probably have some resources.
I'm sure there's bug fixes now. I would really love to revisit that game because it was quite fun. It was all focused on Lego Island, which was totally different from the prior two. The second one at least had a pretense of pretending to look like the original. Mm-hmm. The third one was it was like a giant volcano in the center, a huge mountain you could skydive off of. It was a much bigger island. You had different buildings. I remember the
third one being very race-oriented from what I've seen.
And a lot of roads and tracks. You could fly helicopters. So there was more vehicles, and at the same time there was less things to do in some ways. So it was a very interesting mix. The main story is driven by the studios that are filming a video starring Pepper and his girlfriend. I forget her name. She was actually teased at the end of Lego Island 2. But
the one
that's her right there. Yeah, she has a name. It's escaping me now because it's been years. But and then the Brickster is the villain, and he's driving the blue vehicles, and Pepper has the orange vehicles, and they're trying to race, and it's Island Extreme Stunts. It's crazy.
Chaos. Yeah.
Yeah, and so a lot of fun. The skateboarding mechanics in the second one were much improved over the first one, which is just driving around. You could actually go up and do things. The first one was basically
walking, but faster.
Yeah. So they had a skate park you could do a few tricks on, which was fun.
Okay.
The third one was extreme. Like, it was almost like a little skateboarding game in an action game.
Do like tricks and get combo bonuses?
You had, actually there was challenges where you could go to the skate park and you could grind, you could do all these different things like awesome. A skateboarding game. So it was really fun to play once you got it working. And so that was good. And then the Bricksters, all this time has been... during the filming, he's been sabotaging different things, and at the end, he's taken over the island, and he's used there's like a volcano or something. The mountains started to rise up, and there's all these new challenges. Mm-hmm. And so Pepper goes on this tower climb and defeats the Brickster at the end with throwing pizzas at him. So it's great. So it was a very involved game, very action packed, very fun, and the sets are pretty fun too. Because I got a couple of these as a kid. No, I didn't get the tower. I got that one. I think I got all of them, actually, now that I'm...
How many were there? Do you know?
So there was probably like 3 or 4. I'd have to look at the Bricklink listings to make sure, but my favorite one by far was the skate park.
Yeah.
Because these were relatively new. I think they were introduced in the sports.
In that one, but...
Yeah, this is probably a tie-in with the sports theme that was going on, similar time. But it was great. And every city that we built, me and Steven, afterwards had a big skate park in it. Yeah, we got, I think we ended up getting 2 copies. We had a wider half pipe to have them on. But the skateboard piece was introduced during that time, so that's fun. Used the wheels from the little hand truck or trolley that had existed before. So that was good. They made the pepperoni figure. They made his girlfriend and the Infomaniac and the Brickster and several of his henchmen who are down here. And I don't think the Brickster had any other henchmen in the first game. Second game, he had the Brickster bots, and in the third game, he had henchmen. Mm-hmm. So there were only a few remaining Brickster bots in the third game. Anyway, I could go into detail about all this weird little stuff, but it was very nostalgic, had a lot to do with our childhood. And all the vehicles that you see, like this helicopter, that Brickster's car, the hang glider, all those were in the game, and as is this building. So it was very fun to have the actual models to play with. I mean, you had a couple sets that existed during Lego Island 1, but Lego Island 2 was everything was just...
They definitely did a better job of tying the video game to existing products, I think, because they knew that would be a better way to convert actual sales of Lego, which I think was maybe a little lost on the first one. You know, they were getting good sales on the video game, but why not get sales on the video game and the product, right?
Maybe it would have encouraged people to try and find some of the police station or race car sets that existed a few years prior. So it's probably still around, but anyway, interesting. But so really enjoyed these sets. Enjoyed all the pieces, and that era.
Neat colors there too, for sure.
Exactly. Yeah, this butter yellow. I don't know what the Bricklink term is for it, but it's a very unique color.
It's not the same as the modern bright light yellow.
Yeah,
it's sort of a. I'm not sure what the name of that one is. It's just light yellow.
Yeah, it's either butter or margarine yellow.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's the colloquial term for it.
That's what my mind says, but it's kind of off tan.
Yeah,
but and I think it's not necessarily exclusive to this. I think Belleville might have had some tie-ins or Scala, but it's a weird choice for sure. So. But yeah, I think that's about all we had for Lego Island. I think that you can pretty much find a way to play all 3 of these games. The only one that I've had experience with was with you, Daniel, on Lego Island 1, but 2 and 3 are playable according to some people. So if you're techie and you want to try to challenge,
there's a lot of forums out there that'll have some support for that.
Yeah, be careful before you start modifying files or going into older systems. But yeah, definitely
keep your wits about you.
Maybe even if you want to go for a lighter experience, just watch the playthroughs on YouTube. People have probably uploaded those too. So.
Oh yeah, lots of those, and I'm sure they'll have some colorful commentary to go along with it.
But that was our experiences with Lego Island, all 3 of them, mostly the first one. But did you guys play Lego Island as a kid? We would love to hear your experiences, or are you planning on discovering this for yourself? Let us know in the comments, and we'll be back with plenty more videos throughout the next couple of days.
Yeah.
You'll see
I'll
us
actually round it out. You did plug earlier for the store, so I'll do another one. You can get these great Lego Island t-shirts at atlbrick.com.
Exactly.
We've got Pepperoni's shirt. We've got No Pizzazz.
From the jail.
I didn't actually explain. Yes, there was a sign on the jail that said, "No pizza. Don't feed the Brickster pizza because he can use it to escape jail and cause havoc." But Pepper was dyslexic, so the sign read "No Pizzazz."
Exactly.
And then we also have a third one that I designed that is Briccolini's Pizzeria, established 1997. Where else you gonna eat?
Exactly.
Which is their slogan.
That's the slogan on the radio ad.
It was the only place to eat. So if you're interested in some Lego Island merch, head on over to our website.
Yeah, we appreciate it, guys. But thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.